Great seeing you all here. We really wanted to welcome you. I want to first start. I'm going to go to Eva Ruiz, who's going to give us a land acknowledgement before we get into the nuts and bolts of what we're going to do. So let's go to Eva.
Thank you, David. I hope everyone can hear me. Can I just get a quick thumbs up from everyone? Thank you. So I want to formally and with great respect acknowledge that I am on the traditional lands of the Yokut Nations. My home is built on the unceded ancestral lands of these indigenous tribes. Thank you for letting us honor them and give our thanks to their ancestors and descendants for their constant and careful stewardship of this land. You can put in the chat the name of the indigenous lands of which you are on today. Thank you. And back to you, David.
Thanks. Thank you, Eva. I'll give a second for people to do that so we can just acknowledge that. Great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So, look, we know how busy you all are this time of year. In fact, all times of the year. But we wanted to have this training for you and this resource for you today for a couple of reasons. One is, and just reflecting back, this is not our first. We've done one of these every year, I think the last couple of years. And just reflecting on this today, we are in a very different place than we were a couple of years ago. And you'll hear that today, that we've got some real amazing on-the-ground experiences that we want to share with you today. And we start off by saying that we know that there's no single one panacea for anything, that the challenges we all face as workers and our students face every day in the schools and classrooms are enormous. But what we found over the last couple of years, and even longer, is that community schools have really offered us a way to really change some of those relationships. Has transformed the way many of our locals are relating to each other and our members, had transformed the way that we're relating to and connecting with our community and our students and our parents, and really, and you'll hear today, also really transform the way we're working with other locals across the state. And so for that reason, we wanted to do this. They're on the folks who signed up to this today. We have 32 folks, not 32 folks, way more than 32 people, but 32 locals who are represented, who had grants the last couple of years, either planning or implementation grants. And then we have 26 new locals who are welcoming to this beautiful struggle we're all part of today. And so what we're trying to do is really, people are coming from very different places today. So some of the way we're going to do this agenda is the first hour is kind of a briefing and an update for everyone. And then in the second hour, we're going to actually have focused breakouts. And there'll be, I think, 4 different breakout groups. One breakout group will be for folks who have been meeting more regularly, more constantly since Summer Institute. Then they met again in Vegas. The other breakout groups, so you'll be able to choose according to what your real need and your desire to really learn as you're on this path around community schools. And we want to be clear that we're all on this path together. We're all learning this. There's a lot of things that make this hard, and there's a lot of things we have to break through. And that's why we really want to make sure to offer you resources and some best learnings from over the last couple of years that have really been transformational for locals. And so with that, I'm going to go to Keisha and Brian Guerrero. Keisha Borden and Brian Guerrero, who are going to go over a document that we've developed and some learnings that we've developed that we really want to share with you that has really been very key for locals, and it's both driven by what we've learned from locals and also is continuing to evolve as we continue to learn more. So let me go now to Keisha and Brian.
Thank you, David. Hi, everyone. I'm Keisha Borden. I'm part of the region for community schools team, supporting you along with Lisa Adams, our staff member, and Nicole Love, a regional manager. I'm also a CTA board member representing District P, San Diego and Imperial counties.
Good afternoon, everyone. Brian Guerrero. I am CTA staff in the Instruction and Professional Development Department here in Region 3 in the kind of LA area, but work up and down in the state with my colleagues and all the good members. So we're happy to be here tonight, and we're going to give you kind of an introduction. Let's see, go forward like about 2 slides, please. I think to the one, yes. Are you doing that one, Keisha?
I think so. Is that 7?
One more, actually. Can we advance?
Yes.
This is history stuff. So this is just a little bit of history about the community schools program and key frameworks and tools. That's where we're at. One more. Go forward to the one that looks like the kind of temple.
Yes,
there you
go. There we go. Thanks, Brian. All right. So we are basing our community schools model off of the NEA community schools model. NEA has been working for many years, studying community schools all across the country. And through that work and research, they've found really best practices of what elements should be found in a community school that's going to be successful. Now, the NEA model has 6 pillars, and you may notice that California's model has 4 pillars. They're basically the same content. It may look different because I said NEA has been studying community schools for many years now, and so they may have broken the elements down into 6 pillars. But if you go to the next slide, you'll see that California has 4 pillars that we're working with. And there they are: the integrated student support services, family and community engagement, collaborative leadership and practices for educators and administrators, and extended learning time and opportunities. And it is really important that everyone who is doing the community schools work is aware of these 4 pillars, because that's what is really going to make sure that your community school is going to be successful. And we would hope you would help your district guide them into implementing these 4 pillars into their whatever community schools model they're going to do. It has to have these 4 pillars. That's very important. NEA has found that these are present in successful community schools. Next slide.
And CTA has been working with NEA on community schools and championing this for several years. But about 2 years ago, when this whole process started here in California, California made a major investment in community schools, and we kind of accelerated our efforts and developed a number of kind of higher level goals, overarching goals for ourselves as a statewide organization, but also for the chapters who are engaging with community schools. And these goals are really meant to help folks kind of guide and focus the work that they do in their districts. One of those goals is winning MOUs and contract language that talks about the infrastructure that these community schools will have, that the district will have some type of a steering committee, that there'll be site-based community schools will have shared decision-making, and that there will be a commitment to racially just practices in those schools. And again, this is really the goal here, is to develop MOUs and contract language, because it's great if you've got a partnership with your district, but really it comes down to having that language so that nobody can take it back if there's a change in political winds, a change in a school board, a change in administration at the site. You really want to have, if you can, some type of commitment and signed agreement to that. That's going to take building local union strength and really developing member engagement. Leadership's not going to be able to do this by themselves. And so you really need to have your membership along with you. And we'll share some strategies for that in a few minutes. The same thing with the community, is really engaging the community and building partnerships with parents, community organizations, students. These are, after all, called community schools. And so in a lot of cases, unfortunately, in some cases, the districts are fantastic and really buying into this and really embracing everyone. But in some cases, the districts are not as welcoming to educators and not as welcoming to the community. So it's really we as educators who are helping to bring the community into this and empower the community. Next slide, please. And then one of the things that we're working on at the statewide level is really holding school districts, charter schools, and other organizations that are involved with this, holding them accountable and making sure that the folks who are getting money to do this from the state are really doing things that are going to benefit students in the community and really living up to those pillars that Keisha shared, and educating our own members and communities and the broader public through events like this, through our own efforts, through the California Educator Magazine, through our conferences, about the transformational power of this community schools model. California has a greater commitment than any other state to community schools right now, but it's still only a small fraction of the schools in the states who are in the state who are involved in this. And so our long-term goal would really to be able to show people how effective and how life-changing these types of schools are and these types of relationships with communities and educators, so that we can continue to increase the funding and increase and highlight the good districts and the ones who are doing well with this. So those are kind of 5 goals. And as David mentioned, we've got a tool that we've created, a collection of tools called the 5 steps. If we can go to the next slide, please. That is meant to help chapters who are new to this process. You know, some of you may have just found out that your district applied for this grant and received it and may not know exactly where to start. Some of you may have been involved from the beginning, which is fantastic, but it really highlights kind of 5 overarching places, and they're kind of in order. You can go out of order. You may have to jump around a little bit, but there's kind of a flow to these. And as we'll share in just a moment, there's resources linked to each of these. The first one, as I mentioned, is building the support among your chapter leaders. You know, if you're the only one here tonight, you're going to want to talk to your rep council. You're going to want to talk to your executive board and make sure that the leadership of your chapter is bought in, and we'll share with some ideas for that. You've got to build that membership support as well. Also, you know, because leadership at the chapter level is great, but they can't do everything themselves. This really has to be one of those widely held and deeply felt things. And it really kind of changes the, oops, we just lost slides. I'll keep talking through them and hopefully we can get those slides back up. The third one is that community engagement one, is really building those connections with community organizations. You know, parents, empowering parents. Sometimes if you've ever been on a school site council or something like that, we have great parents that are involved, but if they don't have the capacity to make those decisions and be equal partners in it. So we're trying to build capacity and uplift those voices as well. The fourth one is really getting involved in the planning. There's usually a planning stage before the actual kind of commitment into the school, community schools, and making sure that the voices of educators, the voices of the unions, the voices of the community are involved in that. And then the 5th step is really that full on creating that permanent shared decision-making body, that group that's going to be governing and making decisions out into the future and hopefully permanently, and making sure that there are parents represented on there and student voices and community voices, and that there's some type of agreement around who does what are the powers, what's the authority of this group, that it's not just an advisory body that the district can check in with once in a while, but it's an actual decision-making group. And I think we're still waiting for the main slides to come up. Let me share the 5 steps. So this is the cover of what it looks like. And when we come back up, there's a QR code, so you can all download this. We'll update it occasionally. There's that little chart that we just showed you. And then the first page of the document is actually a kind of general information list. There's a whole section, if you don't know much about community schools, about all the work that NEA has done about it, links to toolkits that NEA, the national organization, has put together, links to Partnership for the Future of Learning, which is other groups really involved in community input. There's a number of things that CTA that we have put out together. So information there, some links to the information from the Department of Education here in California that they've done, and links to a whole bunch of just journal articles, education articles, and things like that. So if you've got folks who don't know what community schools are and want to learn about it, this is a ton of resources. And when you download it, all of these links are live, so you can just click on it and go to that next one. And then Keisha, you're going to tell us a little bit about step one. Each of the steps has kind of a similar setup. And Keisha will take you through.
Thank you, Brian. So step one, as Brian may have mentioned before, depending on your situation, the timeline, if your district has already applied for the planning or implementation grant, you can't do these one by one. You may have to do some simultaneously and in a different order, depending on your situation. So step one, ideally, is to get your chapter leadership on board. And so that includes a lot of member education, understanding the importance and benefits of community schools. That includes creating a resolution that your executive board would pass, advocating for the district to engage interest holders in open, inclusive, collaborative planning and implementation. From there, you can go to your rep council, present that resolution to your rep council again with member education, and have your rep council pass that. Now, why do we want your exec board or your rep council to pass these resolutions? It really establishes the official position of your chapter. Like, this is what our chapter believes in. This is what we want for our students. And this is what we believe will be the best way to implement community schools. And so it really signals that sends a signal to the district, parents, community about you, your chapter, wanting community schools, why you want community schools. And it sets an expectation that this work is going to be open, inclusive, and collaborative. It also makes sure that your leaders are informed and on board, which is really important. So you can achieve that through one-on-ones. You can invite CTA staff like Lisa Adams to come and provide a presentation to your board, your rep council on what are community schools, and some of the folks on this call have done that. You can come to more meetings like this, attend conferences. There are usually community school sessions at many of our conferences. So there's several different ways you can get information and share that information with your leadership. And it's very important. This is a lot of work, but it's a very important work. And it may be a good idea to find a leader or recruit someone who's not in leadership yet to take the lead or be the point person in your community schools work. And as you see at the bottom, there are some links. There are some sample presentations that have been given to exec boards and rep councils that you can take a look at. You can use them. You can tailor them to for your own use.
Thank you. Second step, I'm not going to go through each part of it, but they're all set up very similarly, kind of an overarching, what's the goal at this stage? Step two is to build that support among your membership for community schools. What are some concrete objectives? And then why are these important? Some kind of rationale. The bullets are very specific things you can do, develop a member engagement plan, send out and publicize those resolutions that Keisha mentioned, do a roadshow just like you would around bargaining to educate the membership and listen. So there's specific points you can do. And then the bottom of each one, we've tried to find examples of somebody who's already done this. As David mentioned, we're all learning this as we go. And so if you create something that's really good and works for you, we'd love to have that and kind of fold that into this. This is a living document in a lot of ways, but we have some examples of member communication and some membership tools for educating your membership. So that's step two. Step three is reaching out to the community.
Mm-hmm. So again, just like educating your membership, educating the parents and community is just as important. And as Brian said, there are some bullet points there. Specifically, San Diego and LA specifically have created community partnerships. They found community organizations that are equally interested in educational issues, parent organizations to help them to come on board with their community schools work. I think that's really important. Having community forums where you reach out, go out into the community, and have informational sessions for your parents and families. SDEA did that. And so it really does bring them on board and lets them know that they are part of the process. And there's some, again, more resources at the bottom.
And if I could just add one on that, having done a little bit of community organizing work when I was a chapter president once upon a time, the community remembers. And if it's the local labor organization, if it's the local teachers union who's fighting for community involvement, the parents and the community remember that. And you know, when there's trouble and when you all have to come together, they remember that it was the teachers and the educators who stuck up for them and who made sure that they were involved and not necessarily the district. So, you know, it's the right thing to do, but it's also the wise thing to do. Step 4 is building towards community planning, collaborative planning. And this is really kind of the doing your homework phase. One of the things that we've seen after a year of working with chapters, we've got kind of the same ideas here in this one as in the other ones, but we've noticed that there's a couple of different starting positions of a lot of school districts. You know, as you can see on the left-hand side, some districts don't really know anything about community schools. And so you may find yourself in a position where you've got to do a little bit of education work with the administrators, with the school board, with the district leaders about this is what community schools are. And they may be very receptive once they learn about it. On the far right side, there are some districts that know exactly what it is and are just grabbing as much money as they can and are not interested in having conversations with the educators or the parents and communities. And so you might have to do a little bit more traditional organizing here to get involved, and to, you know, put a little bit of pressure and build those alliances so you can do it. But ultimately, down the middle is where we'd all like to get to, which is to be able to work collaboratively with the district and the other interest holders to develop these plans, to figure out how are we going to structure our leadership committee, what services are we going to provide. You know, sometimes a district writes an application and they say, well, we know exactly what the families need. The families need a dental clinic. And it turns out nobody ever talked to the families, and that's not what the families feel they need. And so part of this phase is also doing needs assessments and really getting out there and talking to the community and giving the community voice about what does the community think they need academically, service-wise, or in all kinds of ways. And so this is the creation phase. And then you get to the final, and again, tons of resources here, tons of links to people who've done this work. It's all live there for you. And then we get to the last step.
Yeah, so the last step is really the end goal. You want to create, and you want the district to commit to, a permanent, ongoing, open, inclusive, and collaborative shared decision-making governance structure for community schools. And the structure has to include educators, family, other bargaining units in your district. Everyone who's going to be part of that community school needs to have a voice in that steering committee. And you'll see the bullet points of what you need to have in that steering committee, who's going to select or appoint those members, how often they're going to meet, what is the scope. Many steering committees have created job descriptions for the community schools coordinator. So the steering committee really is the backbone for planning and implementing community schools in your district. So you'll see that there are several districts down at the bottom who have reached contract language. Some have reached tentative agreements. I think some of those have been converted into actual contract language now. So it is very important to make sure that the work is collaborative and that everyone has a voice. And so all the other steps sort of lead up to create the creation of the steering committee, the organizing, the member education, the community education. All of that comes together in an organizing plan to organize and get the steering committee or some type of permanent governance structure.
And then just
Right.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and then just the last page is kind of your friendly neighborhood community schools team and where you can find us if you ever need us. So 5 steps to community schools. We really hope you'll download this and it will be a useful tool and a collection of resources for you. So thank you very much. Thank you, Keisha, and back to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you both. Really appreciate it. And you could see each one of these steps and each one of these resources, if you looked at them, has come out of struggle, right? That the last few years. There's a couple of questions like how much of this stuff is mandated that the districts do these steering committees. A lot of this stuff you'll find out what we were very successful in California is getting a framework, the best in the nation, that says that we have to be part of this. We did not, but beyond that, what it looks like, how the steering committee is composed, making sure we have real authentic, that we are actually the union as part of this. A lot of that has to be struggled and has to be really based on our power initially with our members and then with our community. We're going to have 3 locals right now who are going to present on how they've done just that, how they've worked these 5 steps, and we picked 3 locals. They're in different parts of the state. This is not just an urban or even suburban. This is rural, suburban. This is all parts of the state are part of community schools. And we're picking 3 locals that are really different points, really in this, on their own journey to carving out the space to the most transformational model. So the 3 locals we're going to have today are Montebello, and we're going to have David Navarre and Elizabeth Kacharian are going to share. And then we're going to have San Diego. We're going to have the president, Kyle Weinberg. And then we're going to go to Natomas and Mara Harvey. So why don't we, they're each going to have about 6 minutes. And so David and Elizabeth, you'll share your time to kind of talk about their journey and how the work they've done initially, again, following those 5 steps and their members, their community, and really building power around this. So why don't we go first with David and Elizabeth?
Thank you, David. My name is David Navarre. I'm Montebello Teachers Association president. Elizabeth Kacharian is our community schools organizer. And when MTA started working on community schools, we had, like Keisha mentioned, our representative assembly pass an educational justice resolution. And an educational justice resolution is important because of the things she mentioned, but it should guide the work that we're doing. The purpose, the goal of the community schools is to deliver for our students the educational justice they deserve and are not receiving. And one may ask, well, why aren't they receiving educational justice? Why aren't our brown and black student populations and many others not receiving a just education? I think that the 4 pillars of community schools addresses those reasons and tries to bring to our students, the educational justice that they deserve. If done well, we can have transformative community schools. In our journey, I see regularly how our educational system in my district I'm sure is not very dissimilar from yours, but they're just not set up to deliver what our students deserve. And the 4 pillars are a square peg in a round hole. And my advice to all of you is that you need to organize every step of the way. You will need the organizing capacity of your members wherever you are on your journey towards community schools. Brian mentioned that a goal is to have locals include community schools in their collective bargaining agreements. MTA, I believe, was the first to win a community schools article in our CBA in the state of California. It's something that I'm very proud of. It's a huge achievement, but it's just another step. It's not the ultimate goal, and it is not most definitely a guarantee that you will have transformative community schools in your district. In the article that we were able to win in our CBA, there's language about community schools steering committee district-wide. And the language details how the association and the district will meet to figure out who gets to be part of that committee. We did meet with the district recently. And in that conversation, we talked about students and having parent participation and community members, and CSCA, and all of those things. And somewhere along the conversation, the assistant superintendent stops me and says, you do understand that this committee is purely advisory. They aren't actually going to make any decisions. which I disagree with, obviously. She said that they can recommend things, but the district gets to make the decisions. And this goes to what I mentioned earlier. Our educational institutions are built a certain way. They're built in a way where decisions are made at the top and the people below follow. Community schools is different. One of the 4 pillars that was mentioned today is shared decision-making, collaborative leadership practices. So this is where we're at. And David mentioned that, the CTA is working on their end. Whatever wins they've been able to achieve, we at the local level have to make sure that it gets carried out in the way that's going to be collaborative and it's going to be inclusive and it's going to deliver something that's transformative, not something that's more of the same. The district, my district, is going to challenge us every step of the way. I'm sure yours will too. As the leader in your local, you need to make sure that you're there to challenge the district, and you need to make sure that your members are behind you every step of the way. And I'll pass it on to our community schools organizer, Elizabeth Kacharian.
Hey, good evening, everybody. David, you did a wonderful job. And just to be clear for everybody out there, David and I are from the same local. So I'm just kind of piggybacking off of what he had said. Right now in Montebello, we are on step number 5. We are, working with the district, and it is an ongoing process. But when I first saw the 5 steps, I thought, wow, this is amazing. You go number 1, number 2, number 3. I saw it as being very linear. But now that I'm doing the work, I realize it's always cyclical. You got to keep on going back. So while yes, we are at step 5, we're building those structures for shared decision making. We're still, building up our member support, and we're still building up our community support, and we are still, working on that collaborative planning. So it's not, you complete this one and you're done, you're ready to move on. You're always going to circle back up. So it is an ongoing process. So thank you so much for letting me be here. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to David. Thank
you. Next, we're going to go to Kyle Weinberg, who's got some exciting news. The president in San Diego, they got a really robust contract language in their contract, or they're working on that. They're close to getting it. Tell us more about it.
Sure. We, Kyle Weinberg, president, San Diego Education Association, middle school, mild moderate education specialist, gen ed English and history teacher. And we did just arrive at a tentative agreement with our district on Monday on specifically community school shared decision making and lifting up our site governance teams at our every community school to guide the community school's problem solving process, including making decisions about how we do needs and assets assessments, who the problem solving teams are, and also monitoring implementation of those solutions. And we also established a new community school part-time coach position of educators that works together with the full-time community school coordinator, specifically on the expanded and enriched learning and collaborative leadership pillars, leading on those with peers and our site governance teams, because we felt that we needed a second position of an educator who has the relationship with other educators at the school sites to really lead on doing the culturally sustaining curriculum, doing community-based pedagogy, and really getting at the racial justice element of community schools. And in terms of the 5 steps, we started by having a racial justice resolution as SDA, very similar to what David described in Montebello. And we also joined the NEA Community Schools Institute together with coalition partners that included community organizations, higher education partners, and student and parent organizers that we had relationships with. That later became our San Diego Community Schools Coalition, and we advocated as a coalition for the San Diego Unified School Board to pass a community schools resolution back in 2020 when Keisha was our president. And that resolution was passed unanimously by our school board. That resolution established our district's community school steering committee that was empowered to develop guidelines for community schools implementation. And that resolution also prioritized shared decision-making at the district and the school levels. We made sure as well that our community school steering committee at the district level included SDA educators, included classified leaders, included district administrative leaders, community organizations, students, and parents. And since the establishment of that committee, we have developed the guidelines for implementation of community schools within our district. We developed an application process that required the commitment of school teams to apply to be designated as a community school, definitely inspired by LAUSD and UTLA and all the work that they all did to blaze that path of having a democratic designation process. And in those teams, you needed to have the commitment of the SDA site rep, of the administration, of classified staff who are participating in shared decision-making, of a parent, and if it was a secondary school, of a student as well. So they all had to be on board, and we had rubrics for the different pillars that guided the narratives that each school wrote when applying to be a community school, and really emphasized that they needed to have already a strong foundation of collaborative leadership at their school in order to be considered for community school designation. And if they did not, then there's a pipeline process where those schools are getting the support. We have about 15 schools right now that are getting support in strengthening their shared decision-making at the school level so that they're ready to be designated potentially for the 24-25 school year. And through this process, we had an initial cohort of 5 schools, and we just designated 10 new schools for the 23-24 school year. And also just wanted to share that since those schools have been designated, we're doing our own SDA Community Schools Institute. We're prepping a pool of educators from the 15 community schools to potentially be those community schools site coaches, to work with our site governance teams that we won out of our 1996 strike that already have purview over the instructional program, so that when we're deciding now in the spring, each site governance team will decide who the site coach should be for their community school, and that the educators who are ready to take on that role already feel like they have the tools they need to lead on shared decision-making at their schools, and really making sure that that collaborative leadership pillar is not just in name, but is real solid shared decision-making and empowering educators to be leaders at our school sites. And I'll pass it back to David.
Thank you. That's fantastic. So you've seen, as you hear, both of those examples, they both say that they've gone, there's steps are reworking these constantly, and it's a constant struggle. You also can hear that it's been many years. We also want to have, we know that many of you are starting out. We want to have a last example from Natomas, which is a newer example of a chapter really on this path and doing some amazing work around this. And so we're going to go now to Mara Harvey.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mara Harvey. I'm the president of the Natomas Teachers Association, which is north of Sacramento. I'm also a high school history teacher. And so I'm just going to start kind of with where we are and what we've been doing. So I'm super thrilled to share that we have ratified an MOU with our district, and in that we ratified a shared governance structure, the community schools position in Natomas. We also included in there the 4 pillars. We had racially just curriculum, and just a lot of work in that was also really educational. So I think what David is saying, for anybody who's out there and is just starting, I feel like in the last year we did all 5 steps all at the same time. So in Natomas, we didn't have a history of admin really being eager to work with us. Our superintendent was kind of notoriously contentious and terrible. So we knew that actually the organizing through this was going to have to happen with a change at our school board level and going from there. So we started our plan prior to last year's election and found some people to run for office who were incredibly strong supporters of public education and did a ton of work to get them elected. And so by getting them elected, it all kind of corresponded at the same time where we were in one of those districts where they didn't understand what community schools were at all. They hadn't applied for the grant. So we were able to walk in and say, you need to apply for this grant. And as soon as they did, we just kind of showed up with an MOU and said, this is what we're going to do. So, first key was changing our school board and then putting together a plan, working with our 2 new school board members, and urging our district to apply for the grant. And I really have to say that I think that pushing the MOU across the table was our opportunity to educate our district about what the opportunities were. And so the process took longer than I think it would in a lot of other, bargaining situations. But because it was, we walked in and said, you guys really should apply for this grant on community schools. And they said, we don't need community day schools. They didn't know what we were talking about at all. So it really gave us opportunities to talk through a lot of these things with our district leadership and say, this is what, this is what we're looking at, and this is why it will happen. And this is how it's going to make schools better for our students. As soon as we won our school board elections, our current superintendent announced he was leaving. And we were able to get the MOU signed just this last month in March, the day after we had a community school forum with some of our neighboring districts. So something that was open to the community to talk about what community schools are and why they're important for our students. So through this whole process, I think what we saw in Natomas was just how incredibly critical it is to have a campaign and build the power in your union and use that, really kind of starting with the election and continue that campaign and build our election campaign around community schools. And every moment I had when I was out walking and knocking on doors with our candidates, I was talking to them about the importance of community schools. So it gave me a place, and it gave all of our members who were out walking time where they could say, this is what we really want to see different in our district. And we definitely saw that come through. So ultimately that organization, I think, is how we win and really how we got started. And I also, looking at the other districts, I can say the same thing. It's like even now that we've gotten where we are, you can still see like there's still a lot of education to take place in a lot of different areas. So, I think that's our story. So I don't really have anything else.
That's your story and you're sticking with it. It's
yeah,
a great one.
If there's a chapter out there that doesn't think they can do it, they can do it.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you to all 3 of those chapters. And as you hear, they all talked about this, and this is something we don't always talk about, but really community schools is directly connected with power, right? But a different kind of power. It's not power over, but it's power with, right? Power with our community, with our students, with our members to do truly transformational stuff. And again, I think what all 3 of these examples also show us, so is a transformation, it can be ugly and it can feel like you're going backwards, and it could be in all different ways and chaotic. But the more that we're on this path together, and that's what we're going to go into this next part. And by the way, I do want to highlight one last thing too, because I know some people are having questions about them. Just want to give you a preview. The breakout groups we're going to have after this last section. We're going to have the Summer Institute groups who have been working on this together for a couple of years now. and that'll be by folks who are already doing that work. The other one is just getting started. The other one is bargaining for community schools and going over our bargaining advisory. And the last one is navigating shared leadership. So we'll have different, so I know people are emailing, texting with questions. Some of those I think you'll be able to get resolved and get some, starting to answer those in those breakouts. The last thing we want to do before we do the breakouts is we're now going to go to Eva and Chris Boucher, Eva Ruiz and Chris Boucher, who are two leaders who kind of represent, are going to share with you and represent kind of how all of us, including our board of directors, our member leaders, our staff, are really building some incredible capacity to really honor the power that you all have and the struggles you all are and the real commitments you're making in this. It's our job as CTA to really support that and honor that and uplift it and really create infrastructure to make that happen. So they're going to go over some of that infrastructure that we've been developing. Eva and Chris.
Thank you, David. So who gets support here? Everybody gets support here. You get support, you get support, you get support. Everyone gets support here. So Oprah has nothing on CTA. I'm Eva Ruiz, and I am a CTA board member in the Central Valley. And go ahead, Chris, introduce yourself.
Yes, so feeding off Eva's energy here, I'm Chris Boucher. I'm a CTA director here in the LA area. Here in Region 3, I work closely with CTA staff members Aisha Blanchard-Young from our Human Rights Department and Brian Guerrero from our Instruction and Professional Development Department. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, on the next slide, our Community Schools Steering Committee. Now, this is not to be confused with the steering committees you heard about earlier. That's a partnership with district and community members and parents and students. This is more like a steering committee internally with CTA, like we have in our service center. So this is the team of union leaders that help to oversee, coordinate, and target areas of support for any and all CTA chapters involved in community schools, both in the planning and implementation phases. And this includes support for the $4 billion California Community Schools State Grant Investment Program. You can see on the screen there that there is representation from NEA, CTA statewide, and CTA by region. The steering committee has a blend of member leaders and staff members. And please note in the lower right-hand corner, the website that I think David Goldberg previously mentioned in the chat as a great resource for you to find documents, as well as the email address to our Human Rights Department if you have specific questions. And now I'm going to hand off to Eva for the next part of our duo presentation. Eva.
Thank you, Chris. So here we have our resources and, back to the next slide. There you go. We have our resources and support. We have CTA regional teams, and you did see some of our lead, but we also have in each region, we do have regional teams, and you will be receiving that information in a follow-up email along with some links in the chat. We also have CTA organizing and planning grants. So those will be links that are placed in the chat also for you to be able to see how you and your local can apply for some of those planning grants and organizing grants through CTA by region. We also have CTA statewide trainings that we will be holding throughout the year. So you will be getting contacted by email as the president, as the lead of your local to attend those. So please look at your email for those trainings coming up within this next year. CTA also has C4OB bargaining advisories, and we did have a bargaining advisory that did come out in October, and your PCS, your primary contact staff, will be sharing those bargaining advisories as they come by way of C4OB to you. So there should be one in the chat, dropped in the chat also. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to my partner, Chris, partner in crime for the NEA programs and coaching support.
Yes, thank you, Eva. For NEA programs and coaching support, please know that NEA has a variety of materials, trainings, and supports for implementing best practice versions, of which we heard 3 concrete examples earlier from our member leaders here, for community school strategies. So these include coaching for local teams, a comprehensive curriculum, large-scale trainings, professional learning communities, useful templates, and a whole lot more. If you're interested in receiving some NEA support for community schools, please contact your primary contact staff person, or you can also email NEA directly. There is a contact person. His name is David Greenberg, and we will get his name and email address into the chat for you to contact. So I just want to make sure that you come out of today's meeting understanding that no matter where or how you need support, there are multiple avenues for you to receive that and multiple people ready to help you get the answers to your questions and the support that you need. If I could have the next slide, please. So this is a statewide meeting that we're having right now, but each of our regions has their own meetings. You can see them there on the screen, the dates when the next meetings are coming up. These meetings allow chapters to dive deeper into the community schools model. You get to interact with chapters geographically close to yours, and you get to develop regional strategies and support structures, as well as creating mentoring opportunities for the up-and-comers. So that's a kind of a more targeted local way for you to get support in a smaller setting. So if you have not yet received a link for your regional meeting that's coming up, please contact your primary contact staff person, your CTA board member, so that we can get you the sign-up information for those. And last but not least, we're holding the best for last here. I am going to hand this back to Ava, and she has not just a special, but a super special surprise for all of us here today. Ava.
So let's go to the next slide here. So here we have a local chapter survey. So you, please help us to help you in what you need. So if you scan your QR code here today with us and you do your survey, you will be entered into a drawing to have lunch with David Goldberg at one of the CTA statewide conferences. You have a chance to win a seat next to David Goldberg at lunch at a statewide conference. So don't you want to be that lucky winner? So take your phones out right now and scan that QR code and fill that survey out because it's all about us being able to help you. So please do fill out your survey, as we need to know where you're at and how we can help you move community schools within your locals, within your communities, to not only help our staff, but to also help our students and their communities. So we're going to give you about 5 seconds to do that. No, just kidding. I'm going to hand it back over to David. I know that we are moving this meeting right along. Please fill out your surveys. We would appreciate it. David, it's all you.
Yeah, and unfortunately, some people may not fill it out because they would get to have lunch with me. By the way, it's my treat, you pay for the lunch. My treat, you pay. I hope you're all well. The survey. So on the survey, what we'll do is that survey will help us, for example, to structure some of the contact we do with you when we reach out to you about what's the best way we can be most helpful. I do want to highlight one other thing also that Chris and Eva pointed out. They talked a little bit about the CTA grants. You can get up to 10 days release time. That CTA, you write a grant and your staff will know about this. If you don't already know about this, you can actually get 2 times 10 days. You can get days for planning time and also days for site visits. It doesn't have to be around community schools. It can be around other issues, but it absolutely could be around community schools. And so there's some resources there already that CTA has built in that can really be a great boon for if you're just getting started on this. So we're about to, in a couple minutes, we're about to And I'll restate again the breakout groups. And by the way, I've been watching this number. We've had almost, I think one person has dropped off. That's fantastic. That's so rare that people stayed on. Initially, we had a 100 people limit. We went over 100 people. We had to go and pay for Zoom right now to get expanded Zoom. So if you know people that were on and missed it, we can get them this link as well when they're on initially and we didn't have space. We'll make sure to get that out to them as well. I guess the last thing before I go over these, I've been working on this along with these amazing co-workers here, compañeros, who have introduced themselves today and gone over this. And even doing this every day, I just want to say that it is amazing to see the work that we all collectively have done in CTA. It really is. All this infrastructure, as you look at our resources, these are all built on the ground things that our members have done. Real struggles, real amazing, beautiful kind of solidarity that people have done with each other. And I really want to give CTA, us collectively, CTA is not a president and vice president, CTA is a collective body. The way that we have put all our energy into this, and really so often we have these top-down, amazing things are supposed to change public education forever, and they go away, and we don't ever hear anything about it, right? This is something where we all should feel very good about us as locals and as statewide about really putting our arms around this and really embracing this for all it can be. So I really want to honor you all for being here today. I really want to honor you for taking your time and really tell you that, again, we're on this path together. We're here. We feel so good that we're able, these regional teams that we just developed these a year ago, right? We've had now a year to really do this. This came out of us building this and you all really building and pushing for this. So let me again say what we're going to have now. And I'm saying this, I'm kind of saying my goodbyes as well and thank yous, because we won't come back as a full group. You will go into these breakout groups and hopefully you'll get some questions and get some feedback going. And then that will end from there. Hopefully it won't be the last time we see you. We're willing to come visit you. We're willing to connect you. We have these regional teams where you can connect with others. We're willing to support you around writing a grant for CTA. Your primary contact staff has also been touched and communicated with about this. So right now what we're going to do is, again, region, the first one, breakout group number one should only be for those people who basically know who they are. These are people who have already been kind of working on this stuff, met in the Summer Institute, met in Las Vegas around this stuff. And those are those locals that have been on this journey for a little bit. So that's the breakout group number one. The second one is just getting started. And that's going to be a Q&A. And we're going to have Lisa Eck, who's an amazing staff member in Anaheim, who's really been helping to create, along with their leaders, a model program where we've actually had dozens of our locals go visit it. Lisa Eck will kind of walk you through and try to answer those questions with you. Then we have a bargaining for community schools. We're going to have advisory where they're going to go over the nuts and bolts about how you bargain. And that's going to be Emma and Rachel are going to lead that effort. They've also been leading some of the locals working together up in that Sacramento area. And lastly, we'll have navigating shared leadership. And that's going to be Bryant and Aisha are going to lead that. So I hope that is clear to you. I don't know if there's any questions about any of the breakouts, but you will choose your own breakout. We will not choose that for you. And so with that, please do fill out the survey. If you download it or you took a picture of the QR, please do. It'll help us to really get some resources to you and some support to you. And with that, we're going to open up these breakouts. And thank you again. Really appreciate you all being here. Thank you. And hopefully these breakout groups will be a great conversation as well.